All right, guys, this is David Baye here from MuscularDevelopment.com. I am with the one and only Peter McGough. Peter and I were having a conversation about just contest coverage and the differences between the contest coverage that you guys are getting and what we're doing in 2014 versus, you know, as little as 20 and 30 and as far back as 40 years ago. Now, Peter, with the internet now, everybody has all the up-to-minute information with these shows right at their fingertips. Pictures, what's going on, we know who won the night of, where even when I got started following bodybuilding in the 90s, it was always waiting for the magazine to come out, even to find out who won the Olympia. And when you think about, here's the biggest event in bodybuilding, and I have to wait either till it goes on the shelf or till it comes to my door, where other sports you can watch it on TV. You know, talk to us a little bit about, or a lot bit about, the differences in contest coverage. You know, aside from the obvious, say some of the things with the internet and things like that.
Yeah, well, obviously the internet's changed an awful lot. Even as little as 15 years ago, there wasn't really great internet presence. People had to, follow it through the magazines. There would be places where you could phone up and find the results at Gold's Gym, Weider, but you couldn't see any photographs for 5 or 6 weeks. And reporting it was totally different. You'd watch the pre-judging. Most guys were shooting on film. There was not a lot of digital cameras then. You had to go back and write the report for Monday morning based on your pure visual experience, what you saw, and you file it because you were always rushing to a deadline, and then the photographs would come in on a Wednesday. Now sometimes guys look different on a photograph than the way you run it. It's a bit easier now. You've got reference to check on the digital photographs on the side as they go up. The immediacy, I mean, when Big Ramy came through last year, everybody saw Big Ramy that day, that night. It went through the world. It was a global phenomenon. If Big Ramy had come through 20 years ago, people had to wait 6 weeks to see this freak, wondering what it was. The word of mouth would have gone around, but there wouldn't have been a picture flying around anywhere. That's the big thing. There's more information flying out there. Everybody can tap in, but the news cycle is quick and so fast. Big Ramy was a phenomenon for 2 weeks, and then we settled down to the next thing. Yeah.
Now, as far as from a contest coverage standpoint, now what we do here with our play-by-plays, we're sitting here, we're typing what we see, and we're sharing it with the people instantly. Now, were you taking notes? Were you sitting there essentially doing your own play-by-play on a notepad? So, like you said, you could go back Monday morning, or was it kind of something where you just sat back and watched and took it all in and went off of memory?
No, I used to sit there with a tape recorder, and I'd tape everything into the recorder. If somebody's number fell off, I would take that, because sometimes you could work something in with that. Sure. Everything that you saw, it was just a total running commentary. The MC comes on, he's wearing blah, blah, whatever it is. It's irrelevant at the end of the day, but you never know when you're going to build that into the story, that something that happens earlier that seems, not relevant suddenly becomes relevant. And you would be collecting. When I was for Flex, and I was the guy that did the gossip column. I used to do the reports and the gossip column, so I was collecting gossip and quips and stuff as I went along the way. So I used to come away from a show with 6 or 7 hours of tape. Maybe only an hour it was relevant in the end. I've still got those tapes.
I was just that's where I was going to go. I was going to say, do you still have those tapes? And if so, that is something that we should look into publishing. I don't know if you'll get somebody to sit down and listen to 8 hours worth, but I bet there's some really good content on there.
It would be interesting to listen to it for 10 minutes just to get a feel of what was going on, but I've got a great big drawer full of the micro tapes, and I look at, and the interview, I've got all the interviews I got, and sometimes I look and say, what did I interview? I thought I only interviewed Bertil Fox 3 times. Why have I got 40? You forget things, then you play it again and you find something else. So I store things. I store things up here and I store them at home, and I should have been a squirrel,
Now, one of the neat things and how I got started with this job, obviously discussing with the people on the forums that we have now that you didn't have back then, is the ability to discuss these pictures and the shows right away, and that's a really cool thing of of what's going on with the internet, musculardevelopment.com, and the forums is we can post pictures, and 15 people can give their varying opinions, and some people are, you know, off in left field, and a lot of people agree on what they see. Back then, it was kind of, you know, you open up a magazine, you read what 1 or 2 writers had to say about the show, and you could formulate your own opinions, but there wasn't really this big discussion back and forth about the placings and all that, was there? I mean,
the thing is, on Olympia Report, which was the biggest report in the magazine of the year, you might do 25, 30 pages. There'd be 15 guys. You'd concentrate on the top guys visually in the magazine, but you might only have 6 or 7, 8 shots of the top guys, you know, and you'd have to rely on the reporter to tell you his thoughts of what was going on and who was holding water or whatever, because you can't always see that in the
which can, you know, can vary from person to person. Even within the members of Team MD, you'll get my opinions and Sean Ray's and George Farah's and Peter's, and sometimes we'll all be sitting in chairs next to each other looking at the same guy, and people have varying opinions.
But now, you see, you can go on the gallery and you can look at the guy from 10 different angles, you can look at him in 4 or 5 different comparisons. But of course, the great thing about when I did a report, I was always absolutely right, because I'm perfect.
You can't argue with that. I do my best, but Peter's always on the money.
That's why you're with MD.
I've been watching bodybuilding long enough.
It's interesting what you say about guys on the forum. I learn from the guys on the forum. You know, I see they say things. I think, wow, I didn't see that. Not that, you know, I'm no special. That's how you got involved. You were on the forum, giving your views, and spotted had a certain talent, and in you come. You know, the knowledge of bodybuilders never ceases to amaze me. That's why you should never, ever, I've never taken them for granted. I've always tried to be still the fan I was when I was out there with the rest of them, telling them, okay, I'm in a privileged position to be somewhere you're not. I'm going to take you there and tell you what I can see that you can't see. And, you know, I respect every level of bodybuilder, and the views of some of the guys on the forum, they're just phenomenal at times.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm in a similar boat as you were. I think most of the time I'm right, and you guys, from the stuff that I've written, know that I'm relatively opinionated, but it is, you know, it is nice when I put something out, and this is something I'm pretty sure of, and somebody else who, whether it's somebody I know well from the forums or somebody I don't know or respect or don't respect, they come in with a valid opinion regarding something as simple as who won this pose or who should have been placed in this position because of what, and you take a second and you read over it and you let it soak in, and and you do really value the opinions of the people on the forums, even though you're supposed to be, you know, the experts. You know, as long as you're a fan and you never stop, I don't want to say stop learning, but never stop looking at it from that aspect, I think there's always something to be learned or another opinion to be valued from other people. Now, we had talked a little bit earlier about leading up to the shows now with the internet. This show coming up here in Dallas, everybody's looking at the pictures of all the competitors leading up to the show, and that creates a lot of hype for every show. You know, back in the 90s, I remember seeing pictures from Gold's Gym in Venice, and it's the same shot and with the stairs back over their right shoulder, and it must have just been that perfect spot. But aside from those pictures from Gold's in Venice, I don't really recall in the magazines, or I guess that's the only place you would see them, seeing pictures of guys leading into shows. So when you were getting ready for shows like the Olympia and Arnold, was there a buzz of how does this guy look right now, or I mean, were people even talking about it, or
Well, the thing was, you know, working for Weider in those days, a lot of the top guys used to come in photo sessions in the 2 or 3 weeks before the contest, so we'd get an idea of who looked like what. And I must say, in those days, guys would be ready a bit earlier, and they'd stay ready later. You know, you had 2, 3, 4 weeks to shoot them. Now it's like, if you don't get them on Wednesday afternoon at 2 o'clock, before 2:30, it's all over. You know, but to answer your question, you know, the technology has changed. People didn't have iPhones that they could just do things, put it on Facebook. You know, what would you do? You're in the gym with some guy, you know, you're his friend, you take a photo, you go to the you get it developed, you then put it in mail, and, you know, you're not going to do that. You know, it's start
sending it to everybody you know.
Nobody was going home taking photographs of the food and then going to get it developed and sending it to send all the friends. Now Facebook, you do it, everybody's showing pictures of food.
So from that standpoint, it was better. And I just made a comment earlier today on my Facebook page about people filtering their pictures with Instagram, adjusting contrast to making them look better. And I was like, what's the point of posting a progress pic that's been filtered? But I suppose back then you couldn't really do much of that.
I think one thing I miss about the old days, and I'm old, is because everybody used to look forward to that Olympia report to get the, it wasn't just one story. There'd be all sorts of sidebars, and 2 or 3 other writers would give, condensed versions of. We'd meet and say, you take that angle, I'll take that angle, we'll do this. So you'd give them the whole enchilada in one go. So it was more a journalistic approach. Now nobody wants to read about the Olympia 8 weeks afterwards or 6 weeks afterwards, because they think they know everything, but they don't. And that's not to demean people's perception. It's just it's passé. I know who won. I know who was second. I thought this guy was third, whatever it was. But in those days, you used to give them the whole story and take them there, and they'd wait for it. I remember 1980 Olympia. Waiting to hear it was in Sydney, Australia. I remember walking into the local newsagents in England and seeing Muscle and Fitness, and there's pictures of Arnold Schwarzenegger on the front. I'm thinking, what's Arnold doing on the front? We didn't even know he'd making a comeback. We didn't know the result. That's how. Can you imagine that today? That would be instantaneous, the whole world.
So it wasn't a well-known thing that he was.
No, I mean, he only came at the last minute anyway. But what I'm saying is,
did he win?
He win.
No, I'm asking you, did he win?
Well, I'm in a minority here. He wasn't the Arnold we knew, but nobody else hit the peak. Frank Zane was injured, Mensah was depleted, Dickerson, was too small. Arnold still had enough. It was, if you judge Arnold against Arnold, he was the loser. But the Arnold who showed up still had enough to beat those guys. And Arnold, the master tactician, even when he was asked to hit certain shots, he'd hit the 3/4 back poses and the VT. He wasn't going to give you a tricep shot and give somebody an easy shot at him, and he got away with it. He just carried it through with chutzpah, But I still think he was right, on the day that version of Arnold beat the other guys. Zane hadn't been injured and lost, because he nearly died in the injury he had. He lost 10 pounds. 10 pounds heavier, Zane could have given him a run for his money, but of course Arnold was still pretty big, Yeah.
I suppose that would be the equivalent today of just going online and all of a sudden finding out that Ronnie Coleman stepped back on stage, something that you'd imagine that you'd know going into the competition ahead of time, but it'd be quite the surprise if you didn't know that and all of a sudden you saw it. So well, I tell you what, we're gonna wrap things up here. I think for right now, we'll try to bring you guys a few more videos here as we go through the weekend. But we're gonna get set up here for the Europa. We got prejudging starting at 2:30. Just kind of getting the media pit set up and testing lights, and we're gonna go backstage and see what's going on back there. But Peter, certainly appreciate your time.
Always a pleasure, David.
Always a pleasure hearing the old school stories from Peter.
Where you were 30 years ago. Just think about it.
Jeez.
You'll be a little old man.
I hope I look as good as Peter does in 30 years from now. So we're gonna wrap it up, guys. This is David Baye with Peter McGough from MuscularDevelopment.com.